Hello and welcome to Video Revealed. I'm Colin Smith. We're going to look at sound design techniques in Adobe Premiere Pro. All right, at the end of this, I'm going to show you where you can get thousands of free sound effects to download. Many of those I used in this right here. I'll also give you a link in the description to several of the go-to places that I will go to for sound effects. Okay, so in this project, I was asked to do a public service video for the firefighters, and it was outdoors and it included a lot of ambience and things like that. And usually what someone will ask is, well, why didn't you just record the sound on the set? Well, I didn't record the sound on the set because it sounded like crap. It was the trucks running, generators running. It just sounded like a whole bunch of machines, and it made it impossible. But there was some sound that I did capture. Let's listen to this. It's just about 3 minutes long. Listen to this and see if you can find out what the real sounds were and what were the ones that I added.
At the end of a hard day's work, Daryl puts away his prized possession, Leader. Nothing is different from any other day. Fires can start for any number of reasons within a typical cluttered setting like this: a careless cigarette, worn electrical cables, or in our case, rags covered in linseed oil left in a pile. Smoke is now visible from the outside of the building. Daryl runs to the barn to save Leader. Daryl cannot save anything else. He notifies the fire service of the fire. Upon arrival, fire crews set up a reservoir to hold water for firefighters to combat the fire. Tanker trucks will shuttle water back and forth to maintain the level and amounts of water required. Once crews have established a water source, they will now set up to combat the fire.
You want to know which one sound was real? It was this one. So it was the sound of them opening up the hose, and you could hear the trucks in the background, which kind of mixed with everything else. Everything else was added. So let's take this apart. First, let's just solo. I'll take this out, but basically this is the So there's a music bed that starts in the nice quiet guitar, then goes into heavy strings. I just wrote that music and stuck it in there. Let's also go back to the beginning and listen to the opening sounds. So let's listen to this track here. And then this one. So crickets, and the other one has ambience and birds. I didn't have to add any reverb or any echo or anything to make that sound spatial because it's a properly recorded stereo ambient outdoor track. And just by the fact that it was recorded with 2 microphones, it's going to give you that expanse. If you record it with 1 microphone or you have a file that's monophonic, it really will sound closed in. This is an outside sound. You might take for granted that when you're listening with your ears outside, you're actually getting that spatial representation. It doesn't matter how quiet it is, you still get that outside sound. So I've got 2 of those on top of each other. That helps right away. And those came from, this is Ambient Nature Trail. So this is one that is in the download. And then the other one is also in the download. This is Outside Wilderness. So that one bird, actually, if I was going to go back and do this again, that really telltale, that's a little bit too much for me, maybe 1 or 2 sounds, but that's a damn loud bird. So I probably would have picked a different place for that because it's okay in the beginning, but with the fire burning, I don't know. But I digress. And then over here, we've got the sound of the horse. Now, it doesn't have to match absolutely perfect unless the narrative was exactly that way. Because we've got 4 feet moving along, it's hard to see exactly where they're falling. You can always use the rate stretch. You could always use the rate stretch tool to stretch that a little bit. Don't stretch things too much because then it starts to sound artificial. But if you could speed it up or slow it down a little bit. So all 3 of those together. And you'll notice here, I've got an audio dissolve to quiet it as the horse goes into the barn. And you can also hear someone else is walking with the horse, so it helps. There's one person and the horse. So then you see the footsteps here. And the squeaking door. And more footsteps. And it fit pretty good. You can see that last step that he steps right there. Boom, he just pivots around and it really worked. And you know, it doesn't take much more than dropping that on, watching the scene, and shifting its position until something feels right. Okay? Let's listen a little further. And he walks off camera. It may be a little bit abrupt. Maybe I could add that a little bit more. I didn't really get into panning too much, but you could automate the panning too. So we could have the pan start more in the center where he's in the doorway and pan a little bit to the left. And the whole time, the outside sounds are playing underneath this. And remember, we've got the narration and the music happening too. And here we've got the inside of the barn. Now that's actually the room noise from that barn. This particular shot was shot on a scouting session when I went out and just grabbed my camera and I was just shooting stuff. Later on, we found out we needed that, and I pulled the room noise from that particular shot just from my Blackmagic on-camera microphone. Actually worked okay. And if you're ever on a professional set, it always makes sense. You'll hear this all the time, is they'll get room noise. That is so valuable. Even if you've had something simple like dialogue in a room, the scene's finished before anything's torn down, someone will call for quiet, the sound will run, the exact same sound, microphone's running, just get me room tone and give yourself 30 seconds, a minute or so of room tone. You give that to the editor, they'll love you for it, because when you put that room tone in there and you just stick it in the bottom, everything else just seems to work better. If you have dialogue going back and forth between people and you don't have that room tone, sometimes when you add in a sound effect or a voice and it cuts off, it goes to an unnatural kind of thing. Let's listen to this right now. This is me talking, and let's stop it completely and have nothing. Instead, let's stop it completely, and I'll continue the sound of the boom mic over here in this room. Bit of a difference. Okay, let's keep going. Okay, so these rags were so quiet. There was, even though the rags are burning, the flame, you couldn't hear it. So what happens a lot of time in sound design and Foley is you're adding a lot more to that. And you'll notice as I zoom in, the volume increases, as if as an observer, you're closer, you see it closer, but you also hear it closer. And that's okay as a hard cut. I've got two different sounds in here. One is just set louder than the other one. So we've got a run in here. And that's a completely different one. That's Foley footsteps, boots run. And you're not about to get that slow pace that he had before and just speed that up, because that slow pace doesn't have the energy. It's got a slow walk to it. Here, we've got footsteps crunching, and there's just a natural energy with those ones. Now you'll notice down here, I've got 4 different segments of this door. And this door came from so somebody's cranking on a metal gate, and I'm cutting this up into multiple places. So you can see he gets the door open, but it weighs so much he has to shift his position. So it's quiet for a second as he shifts his position and then keeps pushing it the other way. All right. And underneath, we have the fire sound being introduced. So as soon as he starts opening that, this is the fire sound. So he opens the door, and it also brings the fire sound. You still hear the outside. We're not in the barn. We're still outside, so we still hear the birds and the crickets, but we're beginning to hear the fire inside. So again, we've got that walking. Let me just solo this one. So that's the horse, and let's listen to this one. So whereas before, when he slowly walked with the horse, he had just the horse, and you could hear someone else walking with the horse. Here I've taken the running footsteps and the horse trotting faster and put them together. So we have more energy happening with that. Oh, let me just put those both on. And you can still hear the fire. He comes back, so more footsteps. Closes the door again. And he runs off. Okay, so if we go to our track mixer, you can see how I've placed each one in the tracks. I've got footsteps on their own. I've got the door on its own tracks, trucks later, and the two natural sounds that are going on. Sirens and the phone and the music and the voiceover also available. So here we have... So that's just a simple EQ effect, the telephone effect, and the parametric EQ. In Audition is when I use that, and since I did this, it's now in Premiere Pro. So we've got the sirens. Okay, so if you're listening in headphones or you have stereo speakers, the panning is actually in that track. So it was recorded in stereo with a truck going by. I didn't need to pan that. And you can see that I'm adding a cross dissolve. And for those, you can just go to your effects, your audio effects, audio transitions, and constant power is the default. So I was dropping that in on here, so you can hear this is a truck rumbling, and it starts quietly. And that right there is an air brake going on. And then they shut the truck off. Again, underneath all of this, you'll notice the outside sounds have never died down. I keep looping them, so I keep dragging out to its duration, put more of both of those outdoor ambient sounds. And again, another truck. And you'll see there's a crossfade in there. The truck backing up, the sound is not long enough, so I just duplicate that and put another cross dissolve between. And here I dissolve to the quieter truck. Now this is an interesting little tool. If you come from a very rural area, there's no hydrants out in the country. So the firefighters actually have to create, it's like a little reservoir. It's like a little pool. So that's a pumper truck full of water. They can't pump from the truck itself. They're pumping from this water, and that way the truck would go out and get more water, however locally it is. Maybe they have to drive to the town and connect to a fire hydrant, or maybe they go to a pond or a stream or a lake and pull in the water. Anyway, the sound of the water rushing in, you couldn't hear it at all. With the trucks rumbling, you couldn't hear it. So I added that. So let's listen to this sound. That's the actual truck running. So I added that in, and this is the rushing water sound. And that sound is ambient waterfall exterior. So they're not going to have rural fire truck reservoir, so you got to get creative. What does this sound like? Well, it sounds like rushing water. And as I was going through the sounds, I came across a waterfall exterior, and if you look at it against the picture, it works. So you'll hear now that that's the natural truck sound right there. So even though I now have the natural truck sound that was occurring on set, because I want the sound of the hoses, I still have the underlying nature sounds going along with it. And then the last wrap up, the sound that you hear is the actual burning of that barn, which put a nice little end on that little piece. So this is the kind of sound design that you can do. This is without adding a lot of effects or sweetening or EQ. I just wanted to give you a basic idea of the kinds of techniques. It is amazing what you can do when you start playing with sound effects and adding them in. Let's just show you where you can download some of these sound effects. These originally came with the DVDs with Audition. There's a couple gigabytes of ambience. There's animals, cartoons, crashes, effects, fires, explosions, Foley, human elements, impacts, lightning, water, tones, production elements, sports, technology, underwater, weapons, weather. There's a whole whack of them. So next time you need to maybe just add a little bit more good quality sound. Sometimes you can just add in sound effects, add in Foley, sound design, and make things sound a whole lot better. Whew. Hopefully you found this informative. If you're new to Video Revealed, take a moment and subscribe. If you want to take your support up a notch, join us over on Patreon for as little as $1 a month. Till next time, I'm Colin Smith, and it's my job to get you looking and sounding your best.